starting our service,
Okay,
please.
so we're here to do something that none of us want to do. This is a difficult time. It's a time of loss and sadness and grief. And all of us are here to pay our respects to our beloved Norton Zucker. We're also here to comfort the family, to be that shelter of peace to them. And so on behalf of the family, I thank you for being here, showing your love and support during this difficult time. Mourning is the price we pay for having the courage to love others. Even in grief, we know that the wonder of human life is too complex and too magnificent to be memorialized in endless pain. The gifts of spirit our loved ones gave us cannot be measured or weighed, nor can they be lost or even tarnished by time. Even in our darkest hours, we know that some of their light and their warmth will always be with us, bringing comfort and courage, and in the fullness of time, healing and peace. We have come here today to honor Norton Zucker. We join together in offering the sacred words of our psalms and prayers in thanksgiving to God, who has given us the strength to live our lives with meaning and purpose. And we offer our own words of love in thanksgiving for the blessing his life brought to us all. In Proverbs we read, "The human spirit is the light of God. Within each of us, God implants a divine spark. Each of us has the obligation to tend this spark and fan it into a flame that will light up one's own life and the lives of others. A lit candle cannot be snuffed out, or it can burn out, or it can kindle other candles. When the flame is passed on to others, the flame will continue to burn long after the original candle has been extinguished. Through our prayers and meditations, we remember Norty. Through our memories of Norty, we continue to kindle the flame of his life. Shiviti Adonai L'negdi tamid ki mimini balemot lachen samach libi v'yahagel kivodi af besari Yishkon lavetach. From Psalm 16. I have set the eternal always before me. God is at my side, I shall not be moved. Therefore does my heart exult and my soul rejoice. My being is secure. For you will not abandon me to death, nor let your faithful one see destruction. You show me the path of life. Your presence brings fullness of joy. Enduring happiness is your gift. Kohelet wrote, "The eye never has its fill of seeing. Young or old, those who depart this life never see enough of the world, never complete their task, never cherish their loved ones enough before they are called home. How they yearned for yet another respite from the final summons, and how we yearned to have them close to us for yet another challenge in our lives, yet another joy, yet another precious moment together. God, be now with those whose hearts are broken, because whenever parting comes, it comes too soon. Console them at this moment. Be near to them when light seems distant. Sustain them, O God, until the time of healing." In that spirit, we read the words from Ecclesiastes. There is a time for everything, a time for every experience under heaven, a time for being born and a time for dying, a time for planting and a time for uprooting the planted, a time for destroying and a time for healing, a time for tearing down and a time for building up, a time for weeping and a time for laughing, a time for wailing and a time for dancing, a time for throwing stones and a time for gathering stones, a time for embracing and a time for refraining from embraces, a time for seeking and a time for losing, a time for keeping and a time for discarding, a time for tearing and a time for sowing, a time for silence and a time for speaking, a time for loving and a time for hating, a time for war and a time for peace. The words, Psalm 23. Adonai is my shepherd, I shall not want. God makes me lie down in green pastures, leads me beside still waters, and restores my soul. You lead me in the right paths for the sake of your name. Even when I walk in the valley of the shadow of death, I shall fear no evil, for you are with me. Your rod and your staff, they comfort me. You have set a table before me in the presence of my enemies. You have anointed my head with oil, my cup overflows. Surely goodness and mercy shall follow me all the days of my life, and I shall dwell in the house of God forever. A sacred pilgrimage. Birth is a beginning and death a destination, and life is a journey. From childhood to maturity and youth to age, from innocence to awareness and ignorance to knowing, from foolishness to discretion and then perhaps to wisdom, from weakness to strength or strength to weakness and often back again, from health to sickness and back we pray to health again, from offense to forgiveness, from loneliness to love, from joy to gratitude, from pain to compassion and grief to understanding, from fear to faith, from defeat to defeat till defeat. Until looking backward or ahead, we see that victory lies not at some high place along the way, but in having made the journey stage by stage. A sacred pilgrimage. Birth is a beginning and death a destination, and life is a journey. A sacred pilgrimage to life everlasting. In a few moments, we're going to share the words that talk about his journey. Part of his journey was that he proudly served our country in the Army, and so at this time I'm going to invite the members of our U.S. military to pay honor to him and the service to his country.
behalf of the President of the United States Army, and the British Foundation, please accept this flag as a symbol of our appreciation for your loved one's honorable and faithful service.
I'd like to invite Norty's daughter, Elise, who's going to share some words with us at this time.
Good. Hi. I want to thank you all for traveling from near and far to honor my dad, Norty, and supporting our families. My dad would have loved seeing everyone together. Family and friends were very important to my dad. When we went on vacations, he would always make sure we visited friends or family members that lived nearby. My dad loved to garden, and from a very early age, he made sure that Gail, Steve, and I were always involved in gardening, whether we liked it or not. Gail has kept up with the tradition. When we moved to Lyndhurst, my dad was very excited that my school offered a garden club. We were given seeds in the spring, and you would spend the summer growing them, and then in the fall there would be a contest to show all the vegetables that you had grown over the summer. One year I came in first place because he taught me so well. My dad really enjoyed working at the family company, State Chemical, as the store manager. He liked meeting people and made sure they got the best product for what they needed. Once in a while, my dad would bring us to his work on a Saturday morning when most people weren't there. We would get to go into the warehouse and ride on motorized carts. He would walk us around the building and we would meet other co-workers. My dad would tell a story of how one of his customers brought into the store a pet ocelot. One day the ocelot was spooked and scratched my dad. Somehow my dad convinced the company to use the ocelot in an advertising campaign. My dad also enjoyed running and going to JCC. He would run 3 miles a day ever since I could remember. On Sundays, JCC would offer classes, and my dad signed each one of us for a father-child woodworking class. We each got to build something with him that lasted for years. Some other favorite memories were playing in the pool each summer at Punderson State Park, going on bike rides, and vacationing as a family. He was willing to try new things and participate in anything my mom signed him up for. He square danced and participated in a costume party on a cruise where my mom created thermometer costumes, Oral and Anu. You could guess which one he was. And of course, they won a prize. Even though my dad should not have lived past 24 after a terrible car accident, he had a love for life and managed to live until he was 91. Although he lived in pain for many years, he taught us to persevere and follow our dreams.
As you all know, I just got back from Alaska yesterday. And typical of me, as my sister always says, I always lose my voice when it comes to oral presentations, so why should this be any different? Anyways, a little different path than what my sister took is I usually write poems, but this time, being in Alaska, I really didn't have the attention span to do that. So I just wrote a few things and here we go. Elise mentioned me in gardening. However, more than that, I am now into growing medicinal plants and learning about spirituality and I guess kind of maybe mysticism. So, about 3 weeks before our dad died, I started to see things around that I had never seen before. Such as I had planted beautiful lilies last year and hoped that they would come up. So when I left my house to go down to visit Kayla and help her with the baby, I saw my lilies coming up, but they were just buds. And I thought, they've been budding for a month and never blooming. And I thought, they won't bloom this year. Came back and my entire front island was filled with my beautiful lilies. So that was one. Then on my deck, I have some impatiens and hanging baskets, and I saw a yellow and black butterfly. I had never seen one of those before. It symbolizes soul awakening and happiness. It is a sign of new beginnings and sends a message of hope. Spiritually, they mean renewal, transformation, change, hope, and life. The next insect I saw, and really animal, was wild turkeys. Well, there's a story in my life about wild turkeys. 2012, when my brother died, coming home from getting manicures, first time ever for Kayla and my mom and I, on the corner of our street was a group of turkeys. I'm like, this is weird. Then, a couple of years later, I saw these turkeys walking down the street in front of our house with little chicks with them. Then, a couple years later, I saw a male and female turkey on my deck. And the female turkey is flying around and flies up on the railing. The male turkey is sitting there trying to get off the deck through the spindles on the rail. It was hysterical. The turkey just couldn't get out. But anyways, finally did. Then, one last encounter with turkeys was the day before I left. I had gone to the post office and came to the traffic signal, and it had just turned red, and I was impatient. So I'm like, just go down this other street called Depot. And I went down it, and sure enough, there were 11 turkeys. 6 of them were adult, and 5 of them were chicks. That was like pretty incredible to me. So, turkeys remind us to develop harmonious relationships with the land, our environment, and consider them as foundations to our well-being and substance, unlocking the fullness of life. Now back to the number 11. 11 symbolizes intuition, sensitivity, and awareness. It often occurs when important decisions are made regarding our life. Okay. So regarding that, my dad had wanted me to go to, I'm sure he had wanted me to go to Alaska and enjoy the trip experience that I had. That was absolutely phenomenal. No, I didn't see wild turkeys in Alaska, but I did see bald eagles. And bald eagles symbolize courage, strength, and immortality. I would say our dad, living to 91, made him pretty immortal. So, along with the lines of those 11 turkeys, back to that, I would like to think the six turkeys were Steve leading the pack with his wife, Elaine, Mel, Nana, and Papa, and Steve's brood. I'm sure with all of that, at some point in time, I will see my dad with them all.
Thank you, Elise and Gail. Rabbi Yochanan ben Zakkai Talmudic scholar, asked his students, Ezu hi derech tova sheyidbak ba ha'adam. What is a good way for a man to live his life? One of his students answered, to have an ayin tova, a good eye. Another said, to be a chaver tov, a good friend. And a third, Rabbi Eliezer replied, to have a lev tov, a good heart. Rabbi Yochanan then said, I prefer Rabbi Eliezer's answer, for those who have a lev tov, a good heart, also possesses the other qualities. Norton Zucker had an ayin tova, a good eye, for he was able to look at life and at people and see the good and joy in everything. As Elise said, he had an eye for gardening. At any given time, especially at midnight, one could find him tending to his garden. You see, Norty was not gifted with the blessing of sleep, which came in quite handy for his gardens and for his fellow comrades with whom he served in the U.S. Army for 2 years. He was the designated soldier who stood on guard at night while everyone else slept. He had an eye for exercise and fitness. Despite suffering a major car accident in his early 20s in Louisville, he fought through the injuries and pain and made exercise a regular part of his life's routine. As we talked about, he could be found at the JCC walking his 3 miles 6 days a week. He had an eye for business and customer service. Norty was the store manager for his family business at State Chemical Manufacturing. He always greeted everyone at the door and took the time to talk to them. He was known to share company gifts with his customers so that they knew they mattered both to his business and, more importantly, to him. He valued everyone, which made him a chaver tov, a good neighbor and a good friend. Norty was fun to be with, and he had a cheerful way about him. He had many friends and loved to entertain people at his house. He was especially active in our Temple Emmanuel Brotherhood and spent many years as an active participant in the Temple Emmanuel Couples Club. He and his wife even co-chaired the New Year's event one year. But above all, and basic to all else, he had a lev tov, a good heart. He was a warm, sincere, generous human being who put everybody's welfare above his own. As his family shared with me, he was the most caring person and would do anything for anyone, especially for his family. He was married to the love of his life, Diane, for almost 60 years. They were set up by a friend, and as Diane put it, he was the most gentlemanly fellow I had ever met. The two of them made a beautiful life together. They raised their 3 kids, Gail, Stephen, and Elise. When speaking about Norty as a father, Elise shared with me that he was patient with all of us and always helped us with our homework. She also made sure to tell me that he had made the 3 of them work the garden. Perhaps that was his way of getting something in return for his generosity, patience, and kindness. Norty loved family time and vacations. Some of the best times they had were at their cabin getaways at Punderson Park. Norty would work all day at the factory, but made sure to come to the cabin every night just in time for dinner. Afterwards, his family and the guests would enjoy watching Laurel Hardy, Three Stooges movies he showed with his 16mm projector in the Common Lodge. It seems that the most meaningful trip he took was to Israel with Diane. As a 25th anniversary present, his children gifted him and his wife tickets to Israel. He did not want to go, but once his feet touched the ground, he loved every minute of the trip. After spending some time with friends in Haifa and a brief stay on the kibbutz, they met with the Temple Emmanuel group with Rabbi Roberts and had the time of their lives. He gave so much of himself to his family. When his sister Corinne lost her husband at an early age of 48, Norty made sure to visit her and her kids often, as if they were his own. He took care of his elderly uncle and made every effort to spend time with his entire family. He especially enjoyed the Passover Seders with Diane's rather large family in Erie, PA. The two of them sought to attend every happy occasion with the family. She was the oldest of 26 cousins, so they were quite busy. He doted on his grandchildren and relished every chance he can get to spend time with them. He truly had a lev tov, a good heart, and he willingly gave so much of himself to the people in his life. Norty was a devoted husband to his wife Diane. He was a loving father to his daughters Elise and her husband Stephen, Gail and her husband Tom, and to his late son Stephen, who was tragically taken from us too soon. He was a most proud grandfather to Kayla, Ryan, Connor, and Lauren, and great-grandfather to Hudson. This afternoon we have gathered to mourn the passing of our beloved Norty Zucker. But at the same time, we are grateful that there is so much to be said about his life, his accomplishments, and the blessings that he has left us. Norty truly embodied all of the qualities of life well lived according to our ancient sages. He lived life devoted to the people in his life. He lived a life full of joy, meaning, and purpose, and he lived a life worthy of God's blessing. While Norty is no longer physically with us, he will always be for an eternal blessing. May the way he lived his life inspire us to follow in his good ways so that one day we too will be blessed with the qualities of an ayin tova, a good life, and a good eye, a chaver tov, a good friend, and above all else, a lev tov, a giving and generous heart. I invite us to take a few moments to pause in silence to reflect on the memories, the blessings that he was while he was here with us, the blessings that he will continue to be for you and for the generations to come, as long as we continue to remember his life. If you're able, I invite you to rise for El Maleh Rachamim. El Maleh Rachamim, Shochein Bamromim, Hamitzei Menucha Nechona, תחת כנפי השכינה, עם קדושים וטהורים, כזוהר הרקיע מזהירים, את נשמת נחום בן אריאל, שהלך לעולמו, בעל הרחמים, הרחמים, יסתירהו בסתר כנפיו לעולמים, ויצרור חיים את נשמתו, Adonai hu nachalato, v'yanuach v'shalom al mishkavo, v'nomar Amen. Fully compassionate God on high, to our loved one who has entered eternity, grant him clear and certain rest with you in the lofty heights of the sacred and pure, whose brightness shines like the very glow of heaven. source of mercy, forever enfold Norty in your embrace of your wings. Secure his soul in eternity. Adonai, he is yours. May he rest in peace. And let us say, Amen. We may be seated. The dust returns to the earth as it was. The Spirit returns to God who gave it. And only the house of the Spirit which we now lay within the earth, the Spirit itself cannot die. Receive in mercy, O God, the soul of our departed Norty Zucker. Grant him everlasting peace which you have prepared for us in the world to come. Though no human eye has seen, nor ear has heard, nor mind has grasped it, still it is our sure inheritance and our everlasting portion. O God, help us to understand that grief and love go hand in hand, that the pain which loss inflicts is the measure of a love stronger than death. Though we cry in the anguish of our hearts, may we be like children who know that their parent is near, and all who cling unafraid to the trusted hand. In this spirit, O God, do we commit all that is precious to us to your keeping. Al Mikomo Yavo Bashalom. May Norton Zucker come to his eternal home in peace. Before we recite Mourner's Kaddish, there is one more tradition, one more mitzvah of the highest form, and that is we will tuck Morty in one last time. It is our tradition to place the earth on top of the casket. We place a couple shovels, the first one being upside down in a way that shows our hesitancy, the shovel being upside down in a way that shows our hesitancy to perform this mitzvah, but then we turn it back over and we do the work that we need to do. We are limited with the amount of earth that we're allowed to place on the casket, but I invite anyone who would like to fulfill this mitzvah of offering a proper burial to come up and do so at this time.
Watch your step, please. That means board. Don't leave it here. Take it off the bottom of the pile.
Just like Berkowitz.
Go along the side, please.
What, is it all right if I go a little bit? What?
Some of you would like to step over this other side. If some of you would like to step over to the other side, hey.
Right now, how do you say that?
Well, it's kind of.
Invite us all together back together and rise as we recite Mourner's Kaddish. Yitzgadal v'yitzkadash shemei Rabbah, v'yalma divrach yiritei v'yamlich malchutei, v'chayechon v'yomechon v'chaye decho beit Yisrael, ba'agala v'zman kariv v'imeru, Amen. Yehi shmei Rabbah mevarach le'olam l'amei omaya, Yitbarach v'yishtabach v'yitba'ar v'yitramam v'yitnaseh, v'yithadar v'yitalev v'yithalal shmei dekudusha b'richu, le'ela min kol birchata v'shirata, tushbechata v'nechamata, dam iran v'alma v'imeru, Amen. Yehi shalama Rabba min Shemaya, v'chayim alenu v'al kol Yisrael v'imeru, Amen. Oseh shalom bimromav, huya say shalom, alenu vel kol Yisrael v'meru. Amen. Adonai natan v'Adonai lakach, yehi shem Adonai mevarach. Adonai has given, Adonai has taken away. Blessed be the name of Adonai. Lech ki shilachach Adonai. Go your way, for God has called you. Lech v'Adonai yeh imach. Go your way, and may God be with you. V'halach lefanecha tzidkecha, kavod Adonai yatzvecha. May your righteousness go before you, and the glory of God receive you. Hamakom yinachem etchem b'toch sha'ar avalei Tzion b'Yerushalayim. Now let all who are gathered here repeat these words, speaking them to the mourners. May God console you. With all who mourn in Zion and Jerusalem. Now go forth in peace to life. The family has invited everyone to come to the home of Gail and Tom Plow, 2976 Osborne Lane in Twinsburg, immediately following this service. This evening, the family will receive guests once again from 7 o'clock to 9 o'clock at Gail and Tom's home. That concludes our service. Thank you again for coming and being that source of comfort, shelter to the family.